Yes, ma'am. Well, good evening, everyone, on this beautiful Tuesday evening. I would like to call the meeting to order. With that same spirit, I'd like to have us please rise and place your right hand over your heart and follow me at the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I heard those words and they moved me spiritually. And I'd like to say, too, that I had the opportunity this last week to bring my father to the Vista Home Center for elderly senior citizens. And it's a wonder to have him back home again, back in California, to be with his family. He was in Arizona for many, many years, born and raised. And now that he's 95 years old, it's a blessing to have him back home again. So with that same spirit, I'd like to have Mrs. Vargas please call the roll.
Commissioner Bass? Present. Commissioner Wentworth?
Present.
Commissioner Kinney?
Present.
Vice Chair Olson?
Present.
And Chair Williams.
Present. Thank you very much. On the agenda this evening, we have several different things to discuss. One will be the meeting minutes, and we're looking for the approval of the Parks and Recreation meeting minutes for September 12th, 2023. Do we have a motion?
I would actually like to make a correction.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that on page 3 in the minutes, on the red line version, that the trail that was referenced was the Butterfield Overland Trail. And that's it.
So that take that as a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second approving the minutes with that correction, Butterfield Overland Trail.
So a motion was made by Amy, Ms. Kinney, and seconded by Commissioner Wentworth. Let's take a vote.
Vice Chair Olson, can I have your vote?
I have to abstain. I was not present at the meeting.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next, we have meeting minutes, approval of the Parks and Recreation meeting minutes for October 10th, 2023. Do we have a motion?
I will move to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I will move to second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wentworth, seconded by Vice Chair Olson. Let's take a vote.
Vice Chair Olson, can I have your vote, please?
My vote is yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Chair Munoz, if I may, I just wanted to make a quick comment regarding the meeting videos. So I know that it was brought up at the last meeting that several of the videos are not accessible on Granicus, and I did want to give an update that we are working with our broadcasting team as well as IT. The videos have been sent to Granicus, but for some reason there's an issue with it actually linking, so our IT department is looking to try and find a solution. But in the meantime, we do have the meeting videos available on our city YouTube channel under the live link, so you can go and access all the videos at that location.
Thank you very much, Ms. Finch. This time, item number three, report, Developer Impact Fee Fund Balance Bond Repayment for September 2023. Do we have a motion? I have a question. Sure.
I just have a question on the Skyline Trail Access Bridge. I just was curious, is that a pedestrian bridge? Or that was just the pedestrian bridge? Okay.
It is, yes.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Kinney and seconded by Commissioner Wentworth. Please take a vote.
Vice Chair Olson, can I have your vote?
My vote is yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment only on items within the Commission's jurisdiction that are not listed on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the Parks and Recreation Commission are requested to identify themselves and state the matter on which they wish to comment. No action will be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications. Ms. Vargas, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Yes, Chair, we do have one.
Fantastic.
White, Woodward. Hey, I just wanted to kind of bring up, this is the second time someone had approached me. You guys took the whole Skyline thing out of the Trails Master Plan and took it over the park, which is fine. But was it last meeting, sometime in October, you referred to Skyline Regional Park as a placeholder. I understand that, but the general public doesn't understand that. If you guys are reviewing that document tonight, if that term could be just eliminated, because it's such kind of a hot topic, a lot of people are really close to that area, even though it's a regional draw and it covers different areas, just that term could cause a misunderstanding and a little more friction in the community between staff and you guys and city council. Just looking for a little bit of harmony. Skyline Park would be a generic name that I don't think would disturb anybody's outlook on that area. So that's all I wanted to say. So you guys are doing a great job. Staff's doing a bang-up job. I've been involved in a couple things. I really appreciate what's been going on. Trust the staff from the top down to the bottom, if there is a bottom. Appreciate everything. You guys have a good night.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any more? Are there any written comments from the public?
No, Chair, no written comments.
Thank you very much. Now for the youth update report by Chelsea Panlaqui from the Mayor's Youth Council.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Panlaqui from the Mayor's Youth Council. The Mayor's Youth Council offers students the opportunity to serve their community, gain a wealth of experience in local government, and add their voice to discussions that will shape the future of our city. Now I will be discussing our upcoming and past events. So today we had our monthly Mayor's Youth Council meeting, and we took a tour of City Hall and the Traffic Management Center, also known as the TMC. The Traffic Management Center is located in the Public Works Department. The department's state-of-the-art, award-winning Traffic Management Center allows staff to assist in relieving traffic congestion in the city by monitoring traffic conditions. The TMZ is a manned center used to monitor traffic signals at key intersections throughout the city. The TMC provides the city with a strong traffic directing system by monitoring signals, utilizing traffic cameras, and communication with Caltrans controlled signals to positively control traffic flow. I will now go into the upcoming events that we have. We are planning our booth for the upcoming Kids and Cops events on Saturday, December 16th. This year, it's located at the Corona City Hall South Lawn. And our next meeting is Tuesday, December 12th. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chelsea. Are there any questions, comments for Chelsea? Commissioner Bash?
Did you go on in the tour today?
Yes, I did.
What was your favorite part of it?
I think seeing how all the cameras work and how they could zoom in on certain areas.
I was gonna ask if you got it. Did you see the cameras and see the traffic?
Yeah, and I saw how they monitored everything.
Great. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Wentworth?
Thank you for your report, and thank you for serving on the Mayor's Youth Council.
Commissioner Kinney?
Thank you for coming tonight, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to be doing with the cops. What was the program?
The Kids and Cops.
Kids and Cops. Okay, that's going to be people bring in. Can you explain that really quick? What that is?
So basically, it's where people can bring toys. It's like a donation kind of event where anyone can bring toys for kids.
Vice Chair Olson?
I appreciate the update. Thanks for being here tonight.
For me, I think it's fantastic that you had an opportunity to tour City Hall. And then secondly, to see the TMZ, the traffic control, and how it bleeds to the city. And as a teen, probably it's more evident for you to see how you're monitored behind the wheel. And we are too as adults too. So that's important because, red lights they mean stop, green lights mean go, and not vice versa. And you see it all the time as you drive around town. But thank you very much, Chelsea. I've been waiting for this for a month. So, Ms. Finch, Community Services Report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we have a lot going on in the Community Services Department right now as we're gearing up for our holiday activities and moving our department plans and projects forward. For tonight's report, we have updates from our Recreation Services Division, who will provide information on our upcoming events and activities, along with a check-in on the status of the Performing Arts Center feasibility study. And then we'll turn it over to Parks, Facilities, and Trails to provide an update on our recent Corona Beautiful cleanup event, as well as upcoming field renovations, which are scheduled to begin later this month. Our holiday tree, which is currently en route to Corona for our holiday lighting celebration. We're really excited about that. And we'll also provide an update on the current status of the City Park project. So with that, I will turn it over to our Recreation Services Manager, Jason Last, to get us started with the report.
Thank you, Ms. Finch, and good evening, commissioners. Holiday season is ramping up, and we have all kinds of great activities and happenings taking place in the month ahead. Tomorrow afternoon, we actually have our first in-person senior center Thanksgiving since the pandemic. And oh my gosh, the demand is so large that we will actually be taking over the CCC, the lobby and the banquet area there for the day. And our participants are going to be treated to a beautiful holiday meal. We have entertainment and, of course, the company that makes it so special. So that's going to be a real awesome event for us, and we're super excited, and we hope that some of you can join us and maybe check it out. We're always looking for extra hands to help us serve, too. Our fall happenings continue at the CCC, offering free and low-cost activities for the community. On November 17th, we will have a family game night. And on December 13th, we're going to have a gingerbread house competition. November 18th, the City Corona Parks Foundation and Fire Safety Foundation will be celebrating the first fully installed AED save station at Border Park at 8 a.m. And this life-saving device can be accessed during park hours in the event of a cardiac emergency. And our fire department and parks hope to continue to make these available at other sites in the future. Our first guided hike in October was well attended, and our park rangers are back and ready to do it again with a guided bird walk on Saturday, November 25th at Hagedorn Canyon. Perfectly timed right after that Thanksgiving holiday there. On Sunday, December 3rd, get ready to spread the holiday cheer with our holiday lighting celebration. One last big hurrah to end it on our signature event series for the year. Get there early. We have amazing entertainment throughout the day, food trucks, holiday treats, local artisans for unique handmade gifts, shop local, kids activities and crafts, including 40 tons of real snow to play in, and of course, our centerpiece, the live tree that Mr. Cortez will be talking about in a bit here. Also, be sure to save the date for the Lita Project, Toys and Tacos on Saturday, December 9th, and our Senior Center Christmas Luncheon on Wednesday, December 13th. All of these events and more are available on the city website under the calendar section. Next week, CNSD is out, which means our Kids Club Adventure Camp is in. Our 9 after-school sites will consolidate to the Vicentia Activity Center here at the Civic Center and provide a full day of fall fun for campers Monday, November 20th through Wednesday, the 22nd. We actually expect to have as many as 120 kids joining us, which is always quite the sight to see here on the City Hall lawn. And then last, I just wanted to let you know that we have the update on Phase 1 of the Performing Arts Center feasibility study that is going before council as part of their study session tomorrow at 3 p.m. This twofold project is intended to explore whether Corona should pursue an additional performing arts venue, as well as the renovation of our existing historic Civic Center theater. As part of this project check-in, consultants from Steinberg Hart will lead the discussion and review market data, providing initial options for the HCC theater, and provide examples that might work for our new larger venue. If supported, Phase 2 would begin to assess site options, cost, and operations before coming back to the council as a finalized report. And with that said, I'd like to turn the mic over to Mr. Cortez, our Facilities, Parks, and Trails Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lass. Good evening, Commission. I have a few updates for you from the Facilities, Parks, and Trails side. Oh, thank you. First up, so this past weekend, we had our last tree planting event up at Foothill and Main Street. We planted 40 trees and 64 total hours. So we had volunteers out there. It was our last one for the year. We planted them kind of in like an open space right there across the street from the shopping center and then down Foothill. It was a great event. We did have some volunteers come out. We had donuts and some water for them. And it was kind of like a nice little transition to fall. Some of the trees were already starting to lose their leaves. So it was a nice time out there. Next is our field renovations. It seems like I'm always kind of bringing up the field renovations. Either we're starting or we're finishing. So we are getting ready to start field renovations again. This will be on all our sports fields this time. During summer, we've tried to focus on our soccer fields. This one does include baseball and soccer. So this will be all of our sports parks, and we'll begin actually next week. So you'll start to see some of that fencing go up. We've been coordinating with the leagues as they're wrapping up their seasons. We'll be coming in, doing some slit seating, aerating. We'll be doing some really, really heavy sanding on our soccer field. So we've got about 150 tons being delivered Monday morning to Santana Park. So we'll be starting to do that sanding, fertilizing, aerating, and then afterwards we'll be doing some top dressing. They'll stay closed through right around mid to end of January, and then we'll be coordinating again to get those leagues, get them their fields back for their opening days. And that'll take us all the way through summer, so we'll be able to give them back some nice fields for their spring season. This one's really exciting, as Donna mentioned. So our holiday tree, as you can see from that picture, there's actually a person standing next to us. You kind of see how tall the tree is. It's about 55 feet tall. It's actually up in Fresno right now, so we have a crew up there. Our contractor's digging it out of the ground. They're going to box it up. It'll be about a 10 to 12-foot box, depending on how much root pruning we're doing on it. We'll put it on a flatbed truck, and it should arrive here next week. So we're going to place it on the front lawn next Wednesday. We'll be out there craning it into place, and then the week after we'll get it all decorated and put the lights on it and be ready for our holiday lighting event. So this one's really cool. So I'm super excited. It'll be a little bit bigger than last year's tree. So I'm really excited to see it finally get here. And then after the holiday season, we'll take it to a park. We're still working on where that's going to go, but we'll take it to another park and plant it. And it'll be part of the urban forest management plan. So kind of fun stuff. And then lastly, we have the city park design services that we wanted to bring back to you. We did, as we mentioned, go out for an RFP, so we're moving into the next phase of the master plan. So we did the massing plan, and now we're moving into design. We did submit for an RFP for several firms to bid on the project. We received 11 proposals, and we reviewed all of them. It was a large comprehensive team that went through them. We had criteria that we went through in order to pick them. Picked the most qualified vendor. We did go with Rios, who was selected from the firm. And now the next step is to actually take it to City Council tomorrow and go from there. So exciting stuff going on throughout our parks. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Finch to go over a few other upcoming agenda items for the rest of the update.
Thank you, Moses. So as you know, we are going through our Park and Recreation Master Plan this evening. This is the next set of recommendations that you'll be receiving from our consultant, who will be providing that report right after this. We will be bringing this back to you one more time at our December meeting to do the final sections of the plan, which will include the recreation program needs assessment and recommendations for programs, as well as the full implementation plan. And after that, we will be taking the plan over to City Council. We are aiming right now for a study session with the council in January, and then final approval of the Park and Rec Master Plan by the council in February. We are also continuing to clean up our Trails Master Plan so we can bring that back to the commission at the end of November. We do have a special meeting right now scheduled for the Trails Plan on November 29th, where we will go through the revised plan, talk specifically about the implementation plan and the projects that are identified as part of that revised plan. We'll also be putting it out for public input around the same time and gathering public input over the month of December. And then our plan right now is to come back to the commission in January with the input that's received, as well as any changes that are made based off of the discussion at the November meeting. And if all goes well, we will hope to take that back to City Council in February and March for their final review and approval. So right now, those are the major items that are on the agenda for Community Services Department, for the Parks Commission, as well as the follow-up actions that are going to be required from City Council. And we are happy to answer any questions you have.
Fantastic. Ms. Vargas, are there any speaker cards from the public?
No, Chair, no speaker cards.
Anything regarding written comments?
No written comments.
All right. Commissioner Bass, do you have any questions or comments?
I wanted to say I'm really excited for the tree and for the holiday lighting celebration. And looking forward to the Promenade Park tree planting in January. So, thank you.
Before we move on, I'd like to thank Ms. Finch and Mr. Cortez and Mr. Last for fantastic presentations tonight. Commissioner Wentworth?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to give a shout out to the Corona Parks Foundation for donating $500 to the Thanksgiving meal for the Senior Center for tomorrow. I did have a question on the AED demonstration. If it rains on Saturday, are we prepared to reschedule that? Because none of the pickleball players will be there for the demonstration. If it's raining, they're just not going to come to the court.
We'll probably have to reschedule for a
Okay.
different date. It's looking like rain, so I
It's
guess
looking like rain?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was like going to be Friday, but even if the courts are wet, they won't show up, so I guess we'll just have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
50% chance right now, so we can continue to monitor that and adapt if needed.
Okay. And then my final request is that, could we have the scope of work for the contract for Rios that goes out for City Park? No longer, as a commission, I just think we should have the scope of work based on what we just went through with these last contracts. So I would like that to be part of what comes through to us at our next meeting.
Okay, so it is part of the agenda that published for City Council for tomorrow. It's part of their contract, the scope of work. We can send that document to you, so you have it for review. But
Okay.
by our next meeting, it's going to be part of the final contract. So-
Okay, all right, thank you. And then, can you just give me the time and the place for Toys to Tacos, just to?
Yes, that'll be, I think it's 11:30 to 1:30 on Saturday the 9th at the Circle City Center. We haven't received any advertising from the Lila Project just yet, so we have been in communication trying to get that finally published, and then we always share that out for the co-sponsorship events.
All right, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Commissioner Kinney.
Thank you for the presentations, everyone. I'm excited about the tree as well. I have a quick question on the contract that's going to be presented to council tomorrow, and if there was already a price tag or assigned to that, what we're looking at.
Yes, so the contract that's going for the design services is $7,596,343 for the design of the project. And that information is all within the staff report as well, which we'll send over to you.
Anything else? That's it. Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Olson?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for the great presentation as always. The AED, that's cool. I hope we can do that in more places. I was at an event last week where unfortunately that probably could have saved a life and didn't because there wasn't one. And I'm just looking around here. Gosh, we could sure use one in this room too. So I just think they're universally great. I think that's awesome. And another shout out to the Corona Parks Foundation for their part in making that happen too. That's really cool. The holiday lighting, unfortunately, I'll be at a company event and won't be able to attend for the second year in a row. I'm super, super bummed about that because that is easily like my, between Independence Day and the holiday lighting, those are my favorite events in the city. And again, I'll miss the snow, which is a super bummer. I did have a question about the trees and trees in years past. It's something that the community really finds a pretty cool thing that we get this big tree, and the tree this year looks beautiful. It looks like an actual Christmas tree, which is awesome. How are the trees doing that we planted in parks from previous years?
So we've not had very good success on the previous trees. So we're actually going to have the contractor that we're purchasing it from do the maintenance on it. When they planted in the past and we traded over the maintenance to our regular general maintenance contractor, it's just too much. It's really a specialty thing to have these specimen trees. So we're going to go ahead and have them do the maintenance until the tree establishes, which will be about 10 to 12 months.
Gotcha.
So they'll have they put sight tubes in there to check how much water's at the root ball. So we'll be using them to this go around to ensure the success of the tree, especially with
Gotcha.
a tree this big. So
Yeah, no, that's cool. So it's not just planting it and kind of crossing our fingers.
yeah, specimen trees are really like a very niche type of deal.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair. A few things on my part. The upcoming events sound fantastic. Looking forward to all those. And then I'm hoping I can be on a guided hike with the bird walk. That'd be exciting. And looking forward to the HCC Holiday Lighting Celebration. That's always fun. And Toys for Tacos, I'm already hungry, so count me in. And the person who's doing that was the commissioner. And Dominic's fantastic. And his team are out there to celebrate people, kids. So I'm excited. I'm hoping to be there also. And then the senior Christmas luncheon, I know Michelle's going to be there, so I thank her in advance for that. And a week or two ago, we were at a senior meeting and where they looked at 5 different art murals, and so I believe that by now they voted on which one they want to go with, and I might have a quick.
Yes, those are currently on display at the Senior Center for view, and they will be making a vote. I believe they're going to let it go a little bit longer just because we have the Thanksgiving event tomorrow, so not everyone's going to be at the Senior Center. And then when we get closer to the agreement with the Corona Art Association, we hope to provide an update on that.
Okay, thank you. Michelle was, Ms. Wensworth was vocal about, to me the other day about sharing with you to see if we could have that filmed. As they go there and they paint the walls and they get a part of the whole process. And that was the whole idea behind that, to have the senior citizens, that's a bad word, the people who are there to be a part of the whole program, to see them, the spirit come alive and they're talking and shoulder to shoulder painting and just talking about things. To see them whole spirit come alive again at this time of year is very special to me. And so it'd be nice to see that filmed for posterity. It'd be kind of nice to see that. And then on the Kids Club Adventure, a friend of mine would like to sponsor 1 or 2 kids for that event, so I guess I'll speak to you about that, Mr. Lass.
Yeah, so we actually have a scholarship program available for that. So if there's any families that are having difficulty signing up or finding the cost too high, just contact our offices and we can work with you to help provide options there.
Great, thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing about and seeing the Performing Arts Center feasibility study, and I'll come to the session for tomorrow to hear that. I do know there's more talk on the Facebook now about that and the cost for that, and some of that may be lost on the airways if we don't talk about it, more often than not. And I do know too that there's a possibility of partnerships that are there on the market, so I'm sure we'll hear about that tomorrow night. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. Item number 5, Parks and Recreation Master Plan Draft. Report by Genevieve Sherrow. Before she begins, though, I want to say that Meg has done a fantastic job. And then not just speaking about it, actually living and breathing about the whole process. And so I had an opportunity to read, if I can, insert some points of view here. And I was just excited about the paperwork. I mean, I saw, oh my God, 60 pages, but I went through every single word, every single phrase, sentence, and was well done. So with that, Ms. Sherrow.
Thank you, Chair. Before we turn it over to Ms. Sherrow, I just wanted to say that we're very excited to bring her back tonight to present the next sections of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We had a wonderful discussion with the Commission at the last meeting to go over the site-specific and system-wide recommendations for the plan. And the next piece that we're going to be discussing with you tonight are the financial sustainability strategy, along with the overall goals and recommendations for the plan. And then what we really hope to get is some input from you on the prioritization criteria for how we identify the projects in the implementation plan and move those forward over the next 10-year period. I do want to note that the plan is still a working draft, so staff is still in the process of going through and kind of refining the organization of it. The content and everything that is in there is going to stay the same, and as well as with any input that we get from the Commission, but I do want to note that you're going to continue to see just some edits to the plan and how it's kind of laid out as we go through the process and get it ready to bring back for your final review and recommendation in December. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Genevieve so she can lead us into the presentation.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners. I'm so happy to be back here tonight to work through yet another kind of administrative draft version of the next section of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So to just reiterate what Ms. Finch said tonight, I'd like to really talk through some of this. This is kind of seeing the sausage being made again. We've got very draft versions here tonight, but we'd like your feedback and input on the financial sustainability strategy, as well as what will become Chapter 4 of the ultimate Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which has the goals, the initiatives, the recommendations, really the heart of the document, and talk about those prioritization criteria moving forward. And I think we already covered next steps, knowing that next meeting we'll have a lot of good discussion about an admin draft plan all put together. So although this was at the end of your packet, I'd like to start first with this piece, the financial sustainability strategy. So as part of this process of developing this financial sustainability strategy, I'd like to draw your memory back about a year to when 110% came to talk with you 2 times. And 110% also worked intensively with city staff, going through a lot of data over the last year to really get a good understanding of where the cost system is right now and make some recommendations for the future. So the first meeting, you might remember that they brought this 3-legged stool approach forward. I'm not sure if this is jogging any memories, but the first meeting, the 3-legged stool approach really focused on the development of service categories. And so they were talking a lot about how do we organize all of the different activities that the city is doing instead of into the traditional ways that it's being done, into really like process types of services. And then they also had as part of the three-legged stool, the next part was who is benefiting from these services? Is it benefiting really the common good, the whole community, or is it really benefiting a small number of individuals? And then finally, the third leg of the stool is really understanding what are those costs of doing business, ranging from indirect to directs, and putting that all together and doing the analysis. So that first meeting, they really focused on the general philosophy about financial sustainability, why we're looking at this in the first place, as well as developing those service categories. And then in the second meeting in October last year, they focused more in on the beneficiary of service. So who is really benefiting from that activity or program that's being provided? And how can that be aligned with the various service categories? So after receiving this input from the commission, 110% went back and did a lot of detailed analysis to come up with a financial sustainability strategy. So to establish I went a little bit further, sorry. To establish the cost of service, 110% they had to go back and determine what is the baseline cost of each service category, and that includes direct costs, like the supplies and the staff of that individual program, all the way to indirect costs, including utilities and supervisor staff. They then used the new categorization of service categories and put each individual activity that the city is providing in parks and recreation services into these different service categories. And then they looked at what's the difference between how much each of those activities is bringing in revenue versus the cost. And so this is foundational to inform the new fee philosophy, whereby services that serve the common good receive the highest subsidies, and those that provide individual benefit should receive less or no subsidy. So 8 individual service categories were identified, and these are organized under like purpose, so-called. So rather than organize programs and services under like type, like these are sports, these are for seniors, these are aquatics, these are parks. It's really about more, what are the like purpose? What are they serving in doing these groupings? And so these range from open access services, this is accessing our parks, all the way to reservations, which are used by just one small, either individual or a small group. So the approach is really intended to discourage cost recovery decision-making based on special interests or social values. And it really helps set the stage for making really defensible and equitable decision-making decisions moving forward. So this graphic represents the structure of the financial sustainability strategy, applying each of those service categories on a continuum of common good ranging to individualized benefit. So ranging from the common good open access service all the way up to reservations at individualized benefit. So open access, again, these are like access to parks, outside basketball courts, and then the next being community health, also serving a high level of community good. These are blood pressure screenings and brown bag food. And then on the far end of the continuum, ranging to reservations. These are, the reservations category is quite broad, actually, the way that it's categorized. It includes both room rentals, picnic shelter rentals, as well as field rentals for leagues. So 110% analysis revealed the total cost for each of these service categories. Building from that information and considering how we could move forward towards a more financially sustainable future, cost recovery goals are set for each of those service categories. So open access service, these are set at a 0% cost recovery. These are entirely for the common good, ranging all the way up into 100 or even 120%, where where reservations have more individualized benefit, and then you can capture some of that to put it back into the system. So there's a range within each service category to target in those goals. It's not just one goal number, but it ranges, for instance, from 60 to 80% cost recovery within a particular category, because there's some variation within each individual activity. So the recommended financial sustainability strategy, and so this is kind of synonymous with setting those cost recovery goals for each of those service categories. It considered multiple factors to get towards this financial sustainability strategy. The first is that there is currently a large gap between the anticipated revenues and expenditures. And currently, the programs and operations are heavily reliant on the city's general fund. Under current cost recovery model, the way that kind of business as usual would maintain, growth in programming and services, which we're considering as we look at recommendations in the master plan, would compound the impact of that funding gap. And we know we are setting high expectations with the master plan, and we have community expectations for high quality service delivery, which requires continuing investments into the system and into programs and facilities. So by expecting higher cost recovery performance on behalf of the more individualized activities, right? Okay, I'm back. So the city can be better positioned to invest more of the taxpayer funding, the taxpayer resources into services that are serving that common good or the larger community as a whole. So the financial sustainability strategy is really just the foundation. This sets targets and goals and really a new thought structure for decision-making moving forward. But it's the first step. It's really just the foundational understanding of how business could be done in the future. The next step is to implement the action plan. The first step of which is to really dig more deeply into the existing data, understanding really a core sampling of the activities that are happening today, including individual costs, how well is that program performing from a use perspective and a client satisfaction perspective, and just kind of understanding what else is going on in the larger market for that individual activity. So the financial sustainability strategy has a few target areas where the first kind of analysis could happen, looking at senior center services, reservations, and really any of those activities that are really far from their cost recovery goals. So the intent is really to look for efficiencies when doing this analysis, looking where it might make sense to pursue partnerships instead of providing the same service if that service is already being provided somewhere else in the community. Thinking about where it might make sense that certain activities might not necessarily have enough demand to be provided, and thinking about where certain cost adjustments might be made. So the first thing to consider would be, where can we have effective partnerships? Partnerships are a really strategic way for the city to leverage existing resources and share responsibilities. The financial sustainability strategy really looks at partnerships as with a critical eye towards making sure that it's beneficial for both parties. So not just that the city is a grantor or a partner that's providing a service, but really looking at how can we find partners where there's mutual benefit for both the city and the party. And then looking at strategic pricing. Corona regularly conducts a citywide fee study to determine pricing for programs and services. A fee study is currently underway. And for Parks and Recreation programming, the financial sustainability strategy is really recommending this cost recovery method based on the cost recovery goals that are listed in the document. If a particular program or activity has a cost recovery goal that is higher than what it's currently performing at, prices might need to be slightly adjusted to increase the performance. If the market wouldn't support that kind of increase, the city could look to partnerships or consider modifying the activity so that it's more individualized and actually, separated from something else that's already being provided, or discontinue that activity if there's not enough demand for it. Success metrics should also be used to evaluate whether each activity is in compliance with the cost recovery goals. And so this is not just comparing it to the cost recovery goal itself and how it's performing, but there's a lot of other metrics that can also be established, such as operational efficiency. How full is the class that's being offered? Are we offering something that's really inefficient from a facility standpoint? What is participant satisfaction and demand for that particular item? And larger, how does it align with the citywide's initiatives and the master plan goals? Once an activity is measured against these success metrics, decisions can be made to either adjust that particular activity, adjust the cost, find partners, or discontinue. And that's just the beginning of the process. So service category cost recovery performance should be reviewed annually. As the city begins to implement this policy, it might want to refine some of these cost categories. And every 5 years, cost recovery goals themselves should be reevaluated. So this is not a one step in time that will always stay as it is and static, but really evolving as the city evolves. As the revenues increase and efficiencies are found, then the city can consider opportunities for reinvesting those funds back into the system to support heightened asset and infrastructure maintenance, addition of new staff to support increasing programs that are recommended, or the ability to offer more scholarships for at-risk populations. So then I'd like to dig into the goals and initiatives, or the goals and recommendations part of the document. So this is really the heart of the master plan. I might have said that last time, that all of the individual recommendations are the heart of plan. You might see in this document a lot of what we talked about last time, really laid out in more of a structured framework, looking at what are all of the initiatives that the Parks and Recreation Master Plan includes. So the chapter starts out by referencing the city's vision from the strategic plan that the city of Corona will be a safe, vibrant, and family-friendly community. Community services related to Parks and Rec are integral to this vision, of course. Well-maintained parks are providing our sound infrastructure, safe community spaces, and really embody the vibrant spirit of Corona. To achieve that standard of excellence, decisions for parks and recreation making should be guided through the lens of consistency, sustainability, and quality. So these three lenses are intended to really support decision-making moving forward. So by consistency, we're remembering our discussions in the past about really ensuring that the same level of service is provided throughout the community, and elevating areas that have historically received less investment. Sustainability, really providing flexibility for change and ensuring that ongoing stewardship that the system will need. And quality, thinking about that high level of excellence, adhering to both national and statewide standards, as well as our community's expectations. 8 goals and related objectives are also included as kind of a hierarchical structure for the PRMP, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And these were introduced to you back in the spring, and you're seeing them here folded into the document. The first goal is to make sure that we have high-quality parks and facilities. The City of Corona will, through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, provide high-quality parks and facilities across the community to inspire and build connections for our residents. The second goal is to have maintenance consistency. that we will manage and maintain our parks and recreation facilities to deliver a consistent, high-quality experience across the community. Our next goal is to have accessibility for all, to ensure that all residents have access to high-quality parks and recreation facilities, with a special emphasis on underrepresented communities to remove barriers for access and create connections to nature. To improve health and wellness, the city will provide parks and recreation programs that foster community health, wellness, and active lifestyles. To have environmental enhancements and resiliency, to have a system that incorporates green infrastructure, nature, flexible spaces, and of course, a healthy tree canopy. Strong community partnerships is also a goal. Meaningful community partnerships are really an important component to promote both engagement, volunteerism, and improve and expand the recreation opportunities throughout the community. And then finally, the last two, to incorporate culture and history, ensuring that parks and recreation facilities create a sense of identity that's reflective of the city's culture and history. And then finally, financial sustainability, to ensure the wise allocation of funds and support our long-term parks and recreation investments and programs. So these all kind of fit together to lead us towards our system-wide initiatives and actions and the site-specific recommendations that we reviewed last time. There are 8 system-wide initiatives under which each of our actions live under: to expand the park network, upgrade existing parks, enhance the park user experience, embrace opportunities for all, improve recreation programs, maintain and manage assets, sustain parks and recreation services, and implement our recommendations through accountability and partnerships. The first initiative is to expand the park network. So this increase in parkland, along with the Trails Master Plan implementation and additional new creative parkland opportunities, is really intended to facilitate access to parks, recreation facilities, programs, trails, really targeting a 10-minute walk for Corona residents throughout the community. And with the new Skyline Park, the Oxbow open space, and new parks at existing detention basins at Lemon Heights and Taylor and Gilbert, the city's able to increase the parkland in the city significantly. The second key initiative is to upgrade existing parks to expand recreation variety. There is significant, as you know, throughout the system, variety, with some areas providing really diverse opportunities and comfort levels and some lacking in amenities. So recommendations for existing parks focus on adding facilities to meet, as we discussed last time, the design guidelines for that particular type of park, adding and enhancing recreation variety throughout the system. New improvements are really intended to enhance both recreation variety and the park experience. They're not really addressing the basic site reinvestment. That's addressed under any recommendations under this, that's addressed under the Maintain and Manage Assets initiative. But included within these are specific actions to really increase variety throughout the system. The third system-wide initiative is to enhance the park user experience. So individual actions under this category include support amenities that play a critical role in providing high-quality parks. We heard from the community a strong desire for more shade and more lighting. And we've also identified public safety audits as an action item within this category as well. The fourth is to embrace opportunities for all. As we noted before, different parts of the community are presenting differently as far as which parks and which types of parks and the level of park recreation. So we've set a target for each quadrant of the community, the 4 quadrants, to have one of each of the types of parks. We discussed these last time. We also talk in this section, we have some specific actions about really prioritizing to address the gaps where a gap might exist within a particular quadrant, and looking at how we can expand recreation options for all age groups. We know we have a gap of kind of older children and teens, so making sure that we have programs in place to move that age group forward. And looking at ADA access and how people with disabilities can actively participate throughout the park system. The initiative to improve recreation programs. Community input as part of this project really reaffirmed the community's love for the special events and the programming that is provided. To expand activities sustainably, the city will want to be strategic and efficient and continue to analyze level of use, participation, and be really strategic moving forward. Over the next 10 years, we've included some proposed actions that have the city exploring ways to build on existing partnerships, develop metrics to enhance efficiency, and of course, to continue to ask the community for their input to keep programming up to date and relevant. We also have a strategic initiative to maintain and manage assets. Maintenance and asset management are, of course, critical components to ensuring a high-quality park experience. Historically, as you know, Corona has been constrained in available funding to support high-quality maintenance and renovation and replacement of facilities as they reach the end of their useful life. Of course, with the adoption of Measure X, we have seen additional funding available to address the routine and deferred maintenance that have existed in the past. So all park types require some type of routine and preventative maintenance to take care of those assets and landscaping. However, some parks with a higher level of use or specialized facilities require a greater level of maintenance. So we've identified kind of two different categories within the system that we've identified whether standard or enhanced maintenance would be required at an individual site. A key implementation action under this item calls for an asset management plan. So this is really a data-driven, detailed plan, identify, evaluate, and manage all of the park assets in order to really get to that high standard of excellence. Through an asset management plan, there will be a clear schedule for reviewing all facilities, maintaining facilities, and thinking about their replacement at the end of the lifestyle. Asset management plan is currently underway with Public Works citywide, not just on parks and facilities, so that will provide a really solid foundation moving forward. Additional actions establish a framework for long-term maintenance of athletic fields and courts, playgrounds, as well as considering how to address emergency needs from a staffing and a funding standpoint. There are two facets to sustainability, and they live under this Sustaining Parks and Recreation Services initiative. The first is environmental, and the second is financial. The way that we envision the plan being structured is for Corona to really embrace both of those initiatives. From an environmental standpoint, this is implemented through the Climate Action Plan, sustainable landscaping practices, and really stewarding the natural resources along the city's borders. And the second piece is financial, which we discussed at the beginning of the presentation. Implementing the financial sustainability strategy, including those cost recovery goals, as well as those action steps moving forward, are included as action items here in the master plan. And then finally, implementation and accountability. Implementation of projects will depend, of course, on the availability of funding sources. Outside funding sources will be necessary for high-cost items. Implementation actions also focus on the continued re-evaluation and assessment and making data-driven decisions. So this is not just one book to sit on the shelf, but really to be thought about and updated and re-evaluated continually. In addition, the actions embrace the rich variety and opportunities within the community through partnerships, volunteerism, and considering community input on future decision making. The end of this chapter includes the site-specific recommendations that you saw last time. These were reviewed and just repeated here because they will eventually live here in the new document. So the last item I'd like to discuss with you tonight is prioritization criteria. So it's important as we start this discussion, and some Parks and Recreation master plans don't think about this piece kind of carefully enough, and will give you all of the potential recommendations, but without kind of a structure of how to implement them and when, and perhaps with too much in a system that can actually be done. And so we know that the city has limited funding to address the recommendations in the plan, but we also want to include recommendations for each individual site so that as opportunities arise, you have some guidance to move forward with. We also know that there is the challenge of ongoing maintenance and making sure that we have a clear asset management plan. So understanding that, it's really important to develop some criteria to help us prioritize which projects should be implemented within the 10-year time frame and in what priority. We've heard from the board a desire for projects to achieve consistency throughout the city. And we also think that priority projects in the action plan should really build some visible results for the park system. So to that end, we have identified 6 preliminary criteria for your input here. The first is funding availability. Does the project have funding available and staffing available to make it happen? The second is level of service. Does the project help achieve the level of service guidelines that we've set in the master plan? The third is about park equity or accessibility. Does the project serve a large number of people or affect a high-use popular facility? Community impact. Does the project add a use that is desired by the community, that was elevated through the community engagement process, that does not exist currently, either within the whole community or within that quadrant? Ongoing maintenance, also a part of the criteria. Can the project be consistently maintained to a high quality standard with existing resources? So we don't want to set ourselves up for failure. City priority, finally, does the project coincide with or support another city project or a city council initiative? So these six criteria can help in decision-making moving forward. But again, we know that there are more needs than available funding to address all plan recommendations for all of the parks, trails, and recreation projects that we've identified during the next 10 years. So this is normal. This is the result of any park system planning process. The wants are always greater than the available funding. So this prioritization process we're exploring is really intended to help identify the most critical needs to move forward in the next 10 years. So the prioritization criteria that we're talking about really kind of does serve 2 functions, and it's not just about identifying the projects that are in the master plan before you, but thinking about this moving forward, because as we know, projects are going to come forward in 6 months or a year or 5 years that are going to just be things that we didn't think about, that were not part of what the community said they wanted today. And so this will set you up for having decision-making criteria moving forward as projects come about. Do they align with the goals in the master plan? And once you gauge them against these criteria, how do they rank? So I'd like to discuss with you tonight those 6 criteria. Are there any criteria that you see that are missing from that list of 6 criteria? And we'd like to hear from you too. Which of those criteria are the most important? If we had to identify, kind of a weighting system, would you weight any of those differently from another? And I'd like to hear from you too about, in the next 10 years, what are the key priority projects that you would like to see recommended to council to move forward? And this is not necessarily, it does say table 4.2 in your document here, but not necessarily those, but larger in Chapter 4, what are the system-wide initiatives that you think are most critical to move forward in the next 10 years? We would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Ms. Finch, you want to add anything to that presentation?
I just want to thank Ms. Sharo again for a great presentation and all the work that Meg has done. We do have the prioritization discussion questions in front of you, but in addition to that, we do want to hear your feedback as well on the financial sustainability strategy, if you have any comments or recommendations on that, as well as the overall goals and recommendations for the plan. So we can take them one by one if you want to take them in order of presentation and discuss each one individually, or if you want to start with the prioritization and then go backwards, we could do it that way too. So I'll leave it up to the commission on how we want to accept that feedback.
Should we ask Ms. Vargas for any cards from the public first of all? Or?
Yes, Chair, we do have one speaker card.
Okay.
Never mind.
Are there any written comments from the public?
No, Chair, no written comments.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Bass, do you have any comments or questions?
So would it be okay if we break it up in order to talk about, or do you guys? Okay. Okay, thank you again for the presentation. So starting with the financial sustainability strategy section. So obviously, yes, there is a concern based on the numbers that came back from the cost recovery table. Let me find that. It's over here. For the revenue versus the cost, and then table G1 is what I was looking at in the appendix, in the cost recovery. And number 3 says, under the current model, growth will widen the funding gap. I'm just wondering with the strategy, is there going to be a place in the recommendation actions where we're looking at that impact and to continue to circle back to that? And then what's going to happen if we are in the continue in the deficit?
So I think that's a good point. The financial sustainability strategy is really a framework within which to look at the current system and decision-making moving forward. So rather than drilling down and determining what that specific gap would be on a direct cost, indirect cost, it's more about how does this change our decision-making moving forward? And so as we look at individual items within, one particular service cost category, how is that performing, and how do we make decisions moving forward based on that? So it really sets the decision-making framework for moving forward.
But like, is the framework, are we saying like, okay, we're not going to approve any services that don't meet the cost recovery model, and then it's, okay, we're going to raise fees incrementally? So I just don't see in the model where it considers that.
So these are recommendations, but it's kind of a target to achieve financial sustainability. We know that the city has the general fund sources, but a continued reliance on general fund sources as they ebb and flow into the future, this is setting the city up for financial success in the long term. So as you make decisions moving forward, it's not going to be a drop everything, stop doing anything until the signature events achieve this target. It's more about, okay, are we looking at our financial sustainability strategy as we make decisions moving forward? The cost strategy right now, the fees are being currently comprehensively updated citywide. How does that play into these decisions moving forward? So it's a target. It is not a must happen tomorrow type of thing. It's a target and a philosophy.
Okay. And then my other question in the key insights for the cost recovery analysis was, For the other cities that you referenced, are these communities that are, or cities that are comparable to Corona?
Which reference are you talking about?
For number 3 and what section is this? Cost of service. It's underneath the table in the appendix under G1. Number 3 says that in many other cities, this category is anticipated to generate revenues, cost recovery greater than 100%. And I'm just wondering if these are cities that we're looking at that are similar to us, maybe in demographics or size or.
Oh, I see. I'm finding the citation. So this is based on 110%'s work throughout the country with a variety of different park systems. So they've worked with the Austin, Texas, to kind of very small different systems. And so they see it as a service category that is often intended throughout a broad range of different communities to actually perform at closer to 100% cost recovery.
The gap seems a bit overwhelming, that's why.
So this is an interesting category because there is so much variation within the way that this service category was set up, because it ranges from park picnic shelters to field rentals, where field rentals are running significantly lower in the cost recovery, and picnic shelters in general are much higher, even above 120% in some instances. So there's a wide range within that category.
Chair, if I may offer a suggestion, since we are on the financial sustainability strategy, maybe we can go through the commission to see what comments are, and if there's recommendations from the commission to maybe adjust these goals, we could have that discussion all at once. I think that might be able to help kind of facilitate this part of the process, and then we can take each section individually.
Let's make it happen.
Okay, my other question was oh wait, so don't move, we're staying on financial sustainability, right? Okay. For the recommendations before the action steps, so we are saying that we're looking to adjust fees before renovating City Park. So that's kind of a timeline there. So I get that these are recommendations, but then by saying that we're recommending to not do it, to adjust anything before the renovations begin, that puts a timeline on it, right?
Go ahead. So I can actually chime in on this. The city as a whole is going through a fee study process with our finance department. As the master plan moves forward and we have some recommendations on cost recovery goals, we're going to share that with the consultant that's doing the fee study, and we can start to make recommendations to our program fees based off of what comes out of this financial sustainability strategy. So as Ms. Charo mentioned, we have these targets. They're not necessarily targets that we're going to be able to achieve overnight. Even with the next fee study process, this is kind of over a 10-year period that these recommendations would be phased in based off of a variety of approaches. So I do want to note that the fee study is something that is going to occur before the city park is open, and we can use these recommendations as part of that process that comes through the fee study.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that is, oh, no, I did have one other question. And how is the city park plan going to be impacting the success metrics? Are we considering that ahead of time before we look at the metrics for that?
So in terms of the city park plan, can you elaborate
Well,
on that a little bit more?
Yeah, like when we're looking at operational efficiency or participation or customer satisfaction, and then we're looking at the city park master plan and looking at what kind of services we want to have out of that park, like, are we considering those things simultaneously, or is that separate?
So through the design of City Park, we're going to be looking at the types of programs that we'll be offering at the City Park Community Center. That's going to be based off of the next piece that's coming out of the Recreation Needs Assessment. And as we're going through that process and designing the facility for the program types, we're going to have the fee study kind of going on simultaneously. So we'll be able to identify, what those program fees should look like. So when City Park is open and ready to go, we'll have a set fee structure for that facility.
Through the lens of the cost recovery, right?
Correct. I mean, that is the goal, that we use this to help identify that.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's all my comments for the financial sustainability. Thank you.
Commissioner Wentworth?
Okay, thank you. I want to just say overall that the approach that we're using for financial sustainability makes a lot of sense, whereas we're trying to serve the most people possible with the highest common good using the highest amount of taxpayer dollars for subsidies. So those are your least expensive programming, and your least expensive things are affecting the most people. And as you get into more individualized activities, you see that the cost recovery will go up. The one thing I did want to note here, I think it would be useful, and I think Commissioner Bass touched on this, but I also wrote this in my notes. The cost recovery on the reservation fees listed at 120%. You have that on the same graph that she was referring to on page 7 on our Appendix G. And then we also see the dollar amounts on our reservation cost recovery there as well on page 5. I think it would be very helpful to pull out the reservation system for the fields, since we do publicly acknowledge that field reservations are a large common good, and we are dealing with mostly nonprofit, everybody plays type of leagues reserving these fields. And so that particular activity is skewing this number heavily, and I think it might be easier to move forward in the documentation if that might be set aside or at least acknowledged. So it would be easier to see, because I think if I was looking at how we're doing on room reservations for, say, Circle City Center, that's cost recovery is going to look completely different than Santana. We don't expect to have anything coming back from Santana that would even equate to what we would retrieve from renting a room at Circle City Center. So I think that might help clarify that. You do mention it in the report, but the numbers aren't pulled out here. So I think that at a glance, if you don't quite catch the couple sentences that mention in it, the report, that can be a little confusing. Let's see. The next concern I had was actually on page 9 on your Appendix G. Let's see. It looks like your recommendation focus areas for preliminary analysis include senior center services, reservations, and those services that are furthest from their cost recovery subsidy investment goals, per the results of the cost recovery analysis completed as part of the strategy. So it looks like you're calling out for the senior center services to have more cost recovery. That's how I'm reading that?
Not to have more cost recovery, just to look at the way that the senior center services are performing against their cost recovery goals, just to dig into the detail a little bit more and to get a little bit more data out of the senior center, because it is recorded a little bit differently right now, so it's harder to tell some of the data. So aligning the senior center data with some of the other data will help understand and tell the story more.
Okay, so your recommendation moving forward is that the staff pull that piece out and separate it for the commission and the council to look at where the expenditures and the cost recovery is going in the senior center versus into the entire service plan?
The recommendation is to start there with doing the individualized analysis of what the costs are. So that is kind of the first step for staff to dig into this data. Now they have a dashboard to work through with tons of information on direct costs, indirect costs, and the revenues. And so really digging in on those pieces next.
Okay. All right, let's see. It also looks like you're really calling out in the next subsequent paragraphs after that is actually almost make a recommendation for the city to sell or lease out the Circle City Center, and also to really explore a much more in-depth partnership with what I would consider, it's not called out as the YMCA, but it looks like it fits for what not our YMCA at the moment, but what a typical YMCA does for a community as far as what they offer for exercise classes, enrichment classes, education, tutoring, and so forth. So it almost looks like that is part of the reciprocal benefit as your condition. And I think that would be a good thing. I think that would be something that the commission would like to see as far as you highlight duplication a lot in here as far as bringing down services. So I would be looking for that kind of opportunity. As right now, I would say the YMCA is probably the closest entity mimicking what the Parks Department is doing. So that's how I'm reading that. Yeah, it's I would say it's hard to come up with questions per se, except just those points of clarification that I had. So I will leave it at that with the Appendix G, and then we can move on to the other section.
Thank you, Commissioner Wentworth. Commissioner Kinney.
Hi, thank you for coming back. I have a question and a comment. My question first was, can there be, I see that you have on the cost recovery, you don't have negative numbers. And so I'm just kind of curious about that. If zero can be misleading because you can have a zero and do a whole bunch of work and still be at a zero. And how do you account for that? And how would you measure that? And why don't you include like negative? Gives a little bigger picture on that. That's my first question.
Yes, so for instance, the open access services, we have a significant cost associated with maintaining the parks every day, and we're not charging anybody to come into the parks. So though that is zero, but it is a negative net cost. It's 0% because we're working in percentages here, but we have all of that data in the dashboard that shows the total cost out for each individual item.
Okay, I'll take a look at that later. We had a workshop last year, we mentioned it. One of the things that came out of the workshop, and I can ask my fellow commissioners that were there if they remember the same thing, we really, really made a point that we wanted to have swim lessons have a special place in the cost recovery and how that is presented to the community. I can't actually even find references to swim lessons in these documents. Maybe they are, I haven't been able to find them. But we really thought that it was a safety issue for our community, and it was something that we're, in Southern California where there's pools everywhere, we wanted to make sure everybody had access to swimming. And right now, it kind of feels like that would be in the individual services or classes, and we knew that at the time, but if we remember, we really stressed that, and I wanted to make sure that is still part of the discussion. There needs to be, we almost asked for that to be an exception, and I understand we're not talking about that layer of detail right now, but I don't see any place where something like that could fit in. So that would be my other comment.
Thought that the way we had this outline, you guys correct me, I thought that what we were doing was with the swim lessons was the infant toddler beginner stuff was under the open access services, and the community health and well-being, which is the second on the list and the most subsidized, is where we put the rest of the swim lessons. And then I thought that that's how it fell under health and well-being. Do you remember that? That's what I remember.
That very much jogs a memory, and then we were talking, as you start getting into older ages and competitive, that starts shifting more into the individualized activities.
Right, so they didn't call it out specifically in here, but that was my recollection.
I just want, because staff has changed and people have changed, I think we were the 4 people that were there. I just wanted to not lose that conversation that we had, and we were all in agreement on that, and it was something that we thought was really important. So I just wanted to make mention of it so that as this develops and it's put into the finalized plan, that there's a way to kind of to look at that and then to solidify that that was something that we felt kind of had its own special case, just because it's a safety function of safety, and we just felt that it was important.
And I'll take a look at where exactly those lie. With the open access, those really are just the parks. This is what anybody could, you don't have to reserve anything to go into. That is, you are just coming into a facility that has no staff there, and you are walking onto the court and playing some basketball outside at a park. So no programs that would require staff are housed under that open access services. Community health and well-being is really, the way that it's currently set up is really focused on those kind of like blood pressure tests and, certain senior services that are really health related. The way that I think 110% really focused in the conversation was to talk about swim lessons from on the continuum of beginner level activities and kind of advanced level activities. Swim team is a very different thing than the needs of a beginner level swim class. But to that point, I think that there can be other ways that we can address the desire and the need for swim lessons, including in Chapter 4, as far as making specific recommendations about what you'd like to see from a safety perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner Kinney. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Great presentation. On the financial sustainability, I've got a couple of things, so bear with me as I go through it. Absolutely recognize the need for sustainability. I think it's a smart way to do it, and agree with the general philosophy of the common good versus the individualized need. Totally on board with that. The slide that's up now, the cost recovery analysis, one box that is literally empty is the lower right hand. What is the target overall cost recovery goal?
Well, that's interesting. It depends, right? It really depends on the target service category, because we're going to be swayed so much by our open access. We spend most of our funds on making sure that our parks are available to our community. So the sway would look very different. I mean, we could do a weighted average somehow of something in there, but we don't have an overall cost recovery. Breaking it out into these, like programs is kind of the best way to do it.
Okay.
From 110%
Okay.
expertise.
And kind of dovetailing into what Commissioner Wentworth said about the fields and the reservations, and that's kind of open access, right? You're taking something that is literally open access and just kind of you're carving out exclusive use rights from the open access for these players to use it. Same with like picnic shelters, right? If I don't reserve it, I can still go and have a picnic there under the open access auspices, right? But when I reserve it, now I'm carving out an exclusive use right from the open access. So, I kind of, in my brain, it's a little bit different than the types of reservation where, you can't use it unless you have a reservation, like the theater, like a room, like something like that, where the staff literally has to open the door. So what is the cost basis for a reservation of a picnic shelter, which is something that we were going to build under open access anyway? So it's just,
I think the intent is that when one individual is using it, no one else can. That's the intent of living that, and that really is the definition of that individualized benefit, right? Like taking that away from the common good.
okay, that's fair. I have concern, and I don't want to overcomplicate things, but things like picnic shelters, I'll just pick on that. Things like picnic shelters mean different things to different parts of our community, right? For some folks, that's their option for having a birthday party for their kid, right? Other folks, they can go rent out Romp-A-Ram or iPlayology. So, I'm worried about some inequity there if we say, hey, we're going to make the cost here because it's a great opportunity to gain some revenue with low cost, that we disenfranchise certain parts of our community more than other parts of our community. And I don't know how we level that playing field, but that is a concern of mine for something like that. Let's see. The fee study that's underway, is it adhering to these principles right now? Like, is this part of the thought process that's going into that fee study?
Right now, it is not. We're just looking right now at what our current costs are. We're very early on in the process, but as soon as this plan is adopted, we are going to share it with the fee study consultant so they can base fee recommendations, or at least try to phase those in based off of what we have here with this model.
Okay. Here, I get through my notes here. If we recover more cost on the OpEx side of things, that's really what we're talking about here, right? The cost to operate these things as opposed to the cost to build these things. There was a mention of, well, that frees up funds to build more things. Now, if we reduce the cost, it really just kind of goes back into the general fund, right? It doesn't just automatically become part of the parks budget that you can now use in other places. Am I mistaken in that?
Well, most of the anticipated increase in revenues would be reinvested back in the system, not necessarily in capital improvements, but in maintenance, in ongoing maintenance. As we, add more recreation variety, we're going to have more things to maintain in each of the parks. So that's the funding that's going back in there. As we enhance programming at an individual location, we're going to need more staffing. That's where we can impact that. So, finding those enhancements in the system that are more program or maintenance operated pieces, that's where the anticipated increase in revenues would go.
Okay. And one final question, just so I kind of understand where things fall in the continuum of service. We've got this great kids club adventure camp that's coming up next week for 3 full days. It's $110 for residents and $140 for non-residents. Where does something like that fall in the continuum of services outlined here? Which category would we put something like that in?
That lives in the education and enrichment services category.
Okay.
It is, it is more of the individual because you are serving one child, but it's not. It is seen as not 100% cost recovery, and the recovery on that right now is 2/3 already. So you're not losing tons of money on it.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. As we move on to other items of discussion, goals and objectives were a key thing to talk about. Is that right, Ms. Finch?
Yes, if we want to follow it in the order of the presentation, that would be the next section that we can discuss.
Back to number 1 again?
What was that?
Back to number 1.
Yeah, and we don't have to go through the goals and objectives one by one. If the commission just wants to provide general comments on overall goals and objectives, we can take it that way and go down the line.
I'll start at the top of the hill then, if you can. High-quality parks and facilities, number 1. Is that correct?
Can I just ask my questions about the goals and objectives?
Sure.
And just as that section as a whole?
Sure.
So, and I might have missed the conversation because these things are already in place. So are these in chronological order of like, this is our first goal,
There is no priority order in the goals. I think all of the goals are intended to be, overarching goals. There's no ranking.
And for implementation and accountability, and we're looking to publish that in February, right? We're looking to put this in place beginning in February?
The timeline has us so that we would bring to you kind of a complete administrative draft next month and then go to study session with City Council in January for their adoption in February.
Okay, that was my only questions. I felt like it was easy to understand. I felt like it was very comprehensive. Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wentworth.
Okay. I feel like I came to the meeting having a hard time formulating questions. More so, I think I just have comments. The goals and recommendations section, as a whole, looks well-written. It reflects what the commission had said to the consultant to begin with. The same with the financial sustainability goals, how we prioritize that, how we move forward with that. So this all looks fine. It looks just as it should as we're progressing through this document. I would say one thing that, as I flip through this, one of the things that I think just needs to be called out just as a point, and maybe if anybody's watching, but it is important to note that in the past, that the city parks system has really been functioning without a proper maintenance and reinvestment schedule. It has just been bumping along. And that has been, with funding constraints through the years. But what this document is really doing is setting a way to prioritize the maintenance and reinvestment scheduling. And that, to me, is the most important thing. That to me, takes out the politicking and the handshakes where community members can kind of get things done or grease a wheel because we don't have a plan in place. And, funding can just be a matter of the people that become, the most active get something rather than the area of the city where we probably need more service, we probably need more reinvestment, we probably need more maintenance, and yet those residents aren't capable of coming to a meeting at dinner time with their kids and all of that. So the great thing about this document is it does set a standard for equality, and it does set a standard for that maintenance and reinvestment scheduling. So I'm glad to see that. I think that's just a huge accomplishment for the city. So I just wanted to point that out. That's a comment there. Along those lines, as we move through this document with the equity, I'll just share this as a concern. We seem to be prioritizing new park space, and in particular, detention basin areas to become parks and opened as parks with some minimal improvements in them. And I noticed that those detention basins really sit in the more affluent and areas that already have a lot of park acreage. And so it's my sense of this document is that it somewhat prioritizes the new development over improving or reinvesting with new equipment or whatever new feature can be thought of into a more established older park. So as that part with this chapter 4 was a little bit hard to marry, but that's how this comes across. So that's kind of an observation and a comment on that. And I guess I'll use the example of maybe calling out like Gilbert Basin Park, you know, to formalize the detention basin, and the other Lemon Heights, maybe put some landscaping in, shade picnic area, other feasible investment in capital improvements that can be done. And I look down the list and I look at Sheridan Park. Sheridan Park is a large park, it's an old park, and the only comment in the list for this park is there's an opportunity to add a greater variety or more unique recreation features. Wow, that park is lacking shade like nobody's business, but yet the other parks have, you know, called out for shade. That park is, the way the playground structures are put in there, there's a lot of open space, there's a lot of wood chips, there's just a lot of spread out area, concrete. There could be a design done at that park that would help with the playground being married to, say, your all-wheel skate plaza could be put into that park. There's no mention of anything for this particular park beyond that. There's a backstop for softball there. That's used quite a bit on the weekends. There's no mention to put bleachers to sit on behind the backstop with a little shade. And yet at Mountain Gate Park, that's a big project. We're going to do that. I understand we have leagues playing there. We have a lot of people there. But you see, I'm drawing the inequity line here. And that's my concern, is that this document reads a little bit like that, where we're not quite paying attention, close enough attention to some of these older parks that I think should be raised above the attention in the verbiage that was given to new park space, Skyline, you know, and these detention basins. So that was kind of a concern. Same with Houston Park. So
May I
yeah,
add,
go
add
ahead.
a couple of comments on that? And
Yeah.
I really appreciate the feedback on that. So there's a couple of things that I think will help with that. One is our discussion on prioritization moving forward. That is a key comment that I'm hearing from you, that we should fold into our prioritization conversation, because we will be looking at what's really the action plan for the next 10 years. What are those projects that we want to be putting in there? You know, again, we were trying to put something down for everything. On the Sheridan Park piece, we also, that was a kind of truncated version of that really long table that you saw last time. It was just the narrative summary, so it doesn't show those X's that show what we
Okay.
are saying needs to be added to that park.
See, and I got the printout that I had made out. I cannot read that graph on the paper. And then I'm trying to look at those X's in this, and I can't see it on my computer. I'm like, you know, making it bigger, smaller, bigger, and I can't follow the table across. And I think that's what we talked about last time. I knew I needed that for this piece. And I went back yesterday, and I couldn't pull it together. So again,
We'll see how we can
there's
make that clearer.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to either line that up or make it visible, because you know, if we're going to be held accountable to the public, and I'm up here and I'm your public, and I can't pull it together, and I'm trying really hard, you know. So I think that's where I was coming from, is, you know, I was looking at the same thing with, you know, Ontario Park. You know, I thought, well, that's abbreviated, but I noticed that we didn't, we were looking at improvements here, and you're talking about putting like shaded seating around the walking loop, but if you've walked that loop, it's in horrible condition. I mean, it's just absolutely horrible. So I'm like, why would we prioritize seating over maybe evening that out and putting some DG in there or something? But then, again, I couldn't pull up, you know, the document, and I on the ask tonight, I wasn't actually sure what you were asking us to do. I'm going to be quite frank. When I read your presentation ahead of time, what you wanted us to come back with these parks, other than like maybe general comments. So maybe you could clarify from here.
On the site-specific recommendations, those were reiterated simply from what you saw last time, so we weren't looking for feedback on those this time.
Okay.
We really wanted you to, and we probably should have left those off, I apologize. We were looking for feedback specifically on the system-wide initiatives and the implementation actions, so that's the
Okay.
entire section right before that one.
Okay. Well, then, I guess my comment would stand that I think that we're overemphasizing and overinvesting in something new rather than looking at what we currently have. I would think that would be my comment. I think you make a good call out here to a multi-generational community center being very much needed in the community and part of the diversity that we need to create here. So I see that as falling probably into the city park plan, but not for certain. So that, this just makes it hard to come out. I'm having a hard time with questions, but I will just leave my comments there. Other than, I think we definitely, the system-wide initiatives, all 8 of those definitely hit on what we were trying to do. And I'm really pleased to see that I'm not looking at this and saying, oh, you're missing something. I don't feel like you're missing something. So I'm pleased to see that. I don't have major concerns about that. So I want to thank you for the presentation, and I will let my colleagues ask their questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wentworth. Commissioner Kinney?
I just have a quick question on page 17 on the goals and recommendations. There's regional parks listed, and I actually do agree with the speaker that was here earlier with calling it out as Skyline Regional Park. But I was wondering what those footnote annotations are on that, because I can't find what those are, what they go to.
Yes, that was in the big table that you had before. Those are left over from the big table that we looked at last time.
So they're not referencing anything right now.
No, that's a typo, thank you.
Okay, I kept looking, couldn't see it. The reason I think I get a little bit worried about calling it a regional park at this point is it kind of feels like if you say it enough times, then it becomes truth. And it's not that I object to it, I just feel like it's premature. And I think that a lot of people could be taken by surprise if it becomes a regional park and then the city says, well, we've been calling it a regional park all along, where have you been? I kind of get a little bit hesitant on that, but otherwise, it looks great. Thank you.
And Commissioner Kinney, so we have it as Skyline Regional Park because that's how it's identified for the city council goals. It's listed as a goal to develop a master plan for the regional park. We can put, if it's the will of the commission, in the recommendation for the staff report when the plan goes to city council, to take out that regional park name for it and just call it Skyline Park, or however you want to recommend that be called. We just don't want to make that change right now because that's the way that it's identified in the council goals. But we can put that forward as a separate recommendation if the commission wants to ask that we do that.
I would advocate for that.
Same here.
Okay, we'll make sure we get that in as a commission
I
recommendation.
don't know, there was a lot that went into that. I almost like raising the alarm bell, because the goals are aspirational, regional. What we saw in that Trails Master Plan was significant, and I think that although taken out, it's not gone but not forgotten. So I don't know about that. I realize it's a placeholder name as they described it last time, but I'm afraid that then that downplays what the city council is looking to do there based on if this is their goal. So maybe I'm disagreeing with that.
Bashir?
I can see both sides of that, as always. But I tend to agree with the speaker, and yeah, we've seen it enough times where things just gain their own inertia and momentum just because that's just what we called it, and then that's just what it becomes. So my vote is for just calling it Skyline something, Skyline thingamajig, whatever we want to call it. Let's see here. If we're talking about goals and objectives, I think they're great. I don't have any real comments or feedback on that. I think they're good. I can't think of another goal or objective that would, capture what we're all overall looking to do. In terms of prioritization, I cannot agree with Commissioner Wentworth more about my priorities are firmly and unambiguously getting our existing inventory up to par. Period. Before we even think about turning a shovel on something new. They've been neglected for years and years and years. So my priorities are B, C, and F, which are upgrade existing parks to expand recreation variety, enhance the park user experience in existing parks, and F, maintain and manage assets. Those are my clear number one priorities without hesitation. In terms of F, manage and maintain assets, what does success look like there? What is a service level expectation if a slide goes out of order, not because of repeated vandalism or something where we got to kind of rethinking if this is the right thing in the right spot, but just, in normal use, something, the swing breaks or the slide goes out of order. And, we've seen parks where there's a piece of plywood over the slide hole for a long, long time. What is the emergency response to that? What does success look like in terms of making that amenity available again, not, kind of when we get to it, but this is the expectation when something like that happens, that we will turn it around in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is, right? That there's an expectation. I think it's important to define what success looks like there. I just want to make sure that I think there is one prioritization criteria missing. And that is looking at, if you look at any project in a vacuum, which is kind of what that algorithm, for lack of a better term, is set up to do, right? Does it meet this, check these boxes in an individual project? Okay, that's cool. But if we zoom out a little bit, what does the rest of that quadrant look like, right? If one quadrant has 6 out of 10 parks that are totally derelict, and another quadrant has one park that's totally derelict, well, if you, in a vacuum, this park and this quadrant and this park and this quadrant looks like they'll both check the same boxes. But if you look at an overall community being served, that's a whole different story, right? So I think that we need to take the context in which that project exists and the nearby amenities and what they're offering as a part of that prioritization as well. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think for me, overall, I thought it was a great presentation. Thank you very much. Some of the key things I've mentioned before in other park presentations is that parking, whether you have, it's mostly lack of parking, and everything is regional parks, citywide parks, community parks. We always have a parking issue. So people ultimately will venture out parking illegally in front of people's driveways or parking the wrong way on different streets. Just to get a parking space to get to a court of some kind. Also, I think we need to look at that parking as one of the major goals of our park master plan goals and recommendations. Secondly, too, traffic control. I think what we have here, and we'll see it here in the next couple of years, that other parks are being developed now, is that we will lack parking, and because it needs to be further studied, and also traffic control and noise mitigation. I didn't see anything here on noise mitigation on any type of recommendations to be further discussed. That's what I would say. Again, transportation, traffic control, noise mitigation, and parking situations. So, with that.
Yes, okay, for prioritization of projects, so I'm gonna say what how I see these in order in my head. I think city priority could be like the first lens that we look through projects because they would be in alignment with initiatives that are already happening. And then funding availability, especially based off of the conversation we just had about financial sustainability. And my question on funding availability is that would we consider these types of resources like equal weight? Or would we want to, like for example, staffing, funding, grants, partnerships, equipment, or would we look at it from like a project perspective as a whole is what I'm thinking. a consideration. And then third, level of service. I think that these three, the city priority, funding availability, and level of service achievement, have a lot of interconnected pieces to other master plans and kind of plans that have been presented. So I would like to prioritize like that framework first. And then, and I just wanted to make sure the level of service, that's like a data-driven, that was something we have like numerical feedback on, right?
Yeah, so those are the facilities that we're recommending adding to the system based on level of service standards.
Okay, because I'm just thinking like if you were to implement a framework that you would be able to like see it a higher number once, if it got to like that point.
Yes, but to that point, there's two different kinds of level of services that we're talking about. We're talking about level of service in terms of the total park system, so achieving that total park acreage. So that is focusing on the new parks. And then there's facility level of service, so all of the different types of facilities in the system. How many basketball courts do you have? All of those pieces. So there's two different things living within there, and I'm hearing from the commission kind of two different sentiments about both new and existing, kind of amenitizing existing parks. So just a point of clarification there.
Okay, so maybe we want to add that into that level of service part right there for the slide. Okay, so I'm thinking if the prioritization gets through those three steps, city priority funding is available and it meets our level of service requirement in comparison to other projects. At that point, I feel like park equity, community impact, and ongoing maintenance can kind of be weighted in a more equally on those three categories. And I do feel like there's a little bit of crossover within those three categories. But ongoing maintenance would be like my last, because that would be like an action plan that would be part of other master plans that we're like continuously looking back to make sure that we have the sustainability there to service those. And then as an add-on, so as I see it, I would prioritize those three steps first, then equal weight with those three, maybe not ongoing maintenance. And then lastly, a look again back at how does this meet up against the vision, the standards, and the goals and objectives? I think that would be like the last nice piece to kind of tie that circle together so that we're just making sure we're holding true to the plan.
So Commissioner Bass, if I can clarify, are you recommending adding another criteria of how it aligns with the vision, standards, and objectives?
Yes,
Okay, so that would be a seventh criteria?
yes. Well, I feel like there's some crossover between the, maybe the park equity and community impact. So maybe we can like,
Yeah, and to clarify kind of the intent of this discussion, we're not really trying to prioritize each of the criteria and which one is the most important over the next. We just want kind of general feedback, or similar to what Commissioner Wentworth had provided in terms of like making sure that we're looking at our existing park system first before we prioritize newer park projects. I think we want to make sure we're keeping it kind of at a higher level where we can get consensus from the full commission. What are some of the main things that you really want us to look at when we're determining which projects that we prioritize for the 10-year portion of the plan?
right, so with, right, I understand it's system-wide, but through that system, when we are actually identifying which projects are going to take priority, then at some point we'll need to like actually have a framework in which we assess those, right?
That's correct. So we're going to take the prioritization criteria based on the feedback that we get tonight from the commission, and then we are going to go back and work with MIG and staff over the next month to create that implementation plan to identify, okay, based off of what we heard, these are the projects that we recommend going forward as kind of the highest priority, medium priority, and then lower priority, and then bring that back with the implementation plan in December, so then we can get the commission to review that and then provide any feedback and recommendations to move that forward at that time. But that's going to be based off of the criteria that we determined tonight.
Okay, right, I understand. The question is which of these criteria are the most important, so that's why I'm saying those ones are the most important to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Bass. At this point in time, I should probably ask the question, have we fulfilled your desires for providing information?
So I'd like to hear from all the commissioners just on prioritization as well. Unless if you've fully given us that feedback already, then we can take that. I don't know if there's any additional feedback that you have on prioritization. I know we were taking each of those sections one by one. We went through the financial sustainability, we went through the goals and recommendations, and then prioritization. So if you want to have another opportunity to provide any feedback, or if that's already been shared, we have the notes of everything that's been provided.
So with that, Commissioner Wentworth, do you have any last?
I think with the prioritization the only thing I would add is kind of what I said at the last meeting. On your Chapter 4, page 9, C3, system-wide enhancements, okay? This makes total sense. This looks like your 5 to 10-year plan. I am pleased to see that we are accommodating pickleball courts with a lot of thought as to placement and noise control and not being close to homes and moving that thinking forward. Same thing that the pump tracks are on there because we talked about how do we engage our teens more. And to this end, this is where the only part that I think, and I brought this up last time, is where I wanted to see a little bit more thought and add-on was as we're looking at the system, part of what's engaging the kids in the community is the parents' ability to enroll their kids in some fun and low-cost sports activities and outdoor activities. And to that end, having the infrastructure to support that makes sense. The problem is pickleball is a great example. Now you've laid the framework for the support infrastructure to really allow pickleball to flourish as the sport is intended to, with several courts in one place. And you should see cost recovery at some point. You know, you're going to have reservation cost recovery. There's going to be a multitude of things that could go on with that. But then let's move to like the next idea. If you want a low-cost basketball league in the city and you really want it to flourish, you can't just have 2 indoor gyms and some half courts here and there, right? If you go over to El Cerrito Park in the evening, the basketball courts are full. There's probably some activity there that needs a reservation that doesn't have a reservation. I'm just going to say that. I spent a lot of time there. That indicates to me when I look around and I see that kind of activity going on that we are short basketball courts. And I know that the city can put on a low-cost league for multiple ages because we've done it. We do it. And we lack for space. So that overall thinking about what really engages the community, when people say, oh, this is so great, my kids are in this or in that, they're doing these things, it's because it's affordable, the infrastructure is there, everybody gets to play. As a whole, for the planning and the growth of the community that's gone on in the past, we've been able to accommodate soccer. They looked at soccer in those terms, and so we have a number of fields that operate that way. Same with baseball. Softball has its own history. That was a lot of hard work and a lot of input and work from the community to make Butterfield have the softball fields because we didn't have any. So you see the community input, and I'm looking at this component being missing. So I brought this up before. If you have 4 tennis courts at Kellogg and 4 tennis courts at Mountain Gate, and you need 6 courts to have a league, and 6 courts for the city to could even operate a low-cost league play for kids and multi-ages, you need to have 6 courts in one place. So again, the infrastructure is missing to allow the programming to grow and flourish. And so that's what I see in competing communities where we have all this land and we have all this availability, but the ability to maximize it seems to be something that needs to be in this priority list. So I see the recommendations for Chase Park, Fairview Park. These are large fields that aren't being utilized. Right now, nobody's using Chase Park, and it's just a huge, flat, open field. And yet, we've got reservations going on at Jameson for touch for football. They could be using Chase Park. It's not being used. It's recognized as being underutilized, but my point is like to Jason, Mr. Lass, is when we're programming this for them and they filled up Citrus Park and they're looking for alternate practice places, it's like, how do we marry this whole program? And we know we've got competing entities coming into the city wanting the field space. You know, how do we pull it together to say, okay, we're able to service the maximum amount of kids that want to play football because these are our three main practice areas: Chase Park, Citrus Park, and Jameson. They all align. They're all in the same area. You know, there's a consistency to that. Just like I'm laying out the idea that if you had 4 or 5 basketball courts in one spot instead of 1 or 2 here and there, like we're currently functioning, it just allows for the ease of programming and that kind of reservation system for leagues to come in, but also for the city to do low cost and full participation, everybody plays type of thing. So I brought that up last time in my comments, and that's not addressed in this, but I think that is part of what people think of when they think of parks and how we program them and utilize them. They're not, yes, they're open spaces, everybody can use it and play, but to the point of, are we able to program it efficiently to get the most people participating that we can and to the largest subsidy that we can? So that would be my comment.
Thank you.
So if I can, Chair, so what I'm hearing is you want us to put in recommendations to look for opportunities to expand league play for basketball and tennis, similar to what we talked about at the last meeting. And one of the things that the commission had asked us to do was to look at surrounding areas and what kind of tournament-style facilities they have. We do have staff that is doing that research now, and we will bring that back at the December meeting so we can kind of formalize that discussion from the commission and get a consistent recommendation from the body as a whole if we want to recommend more of the tournament-style league play facilities and identify which specific sports. But we're still putting that information together in terms of what's available, because that was one of the things that we had heard from the last meeting.
I think so. I think even like with softball, I think you might find that even the girls softball league will say they could use an extra field or an extra location, that kind of, as the population grows. You know, those fields were put in place, what, in the 80s? So it's like the population has grown. My concern is we're setting this plan. Do we talk about how do we accommodate that growth? What alternate can Fairview take that on with improvements? Could Sheridan Park take that on as an additional game location with improvements? Those, to me, these are components that's kind of a higher level thinking about the entire system that we didn't talk about. I brought this up at the last time waiting for this, and so that's kind of what I was looking for. That's not in here, and I realize that it's kind of going in a different way. I understand that, but I think what I'm looking for is some verbiage in here that talks about how we consolidate our resources to really make them work for us. And that would be a priority if I could, I guess if I could sit down and write the page myself. It's hard to do it up here off the cuff, but that's kind of where I'm going. Hopefully that's clear enough.
Commissioner Wentworth, would it be fair to say that you'd like to see another goal and objective that kind of speaks to that broader system view of coordinating
Yes, you're right,
assets
yeah.
to facilitate tournament league play or organized sports?
Yes, probably, yes. Is some, that higher level thinking. And I'm not just thinking league play because as far as like pay to play where we get into like super competitive, I am thinking about, you know, again, it doesn't have to be that everybody is paying top dollar to play sports. So we have nonprofits that operate in the realm of as low cost as they can get, and then everybody plays schematic. So are we able to function and meet that as much? Yeah, so that's probably what I'm looking for, is a priority in there that describes this kind of thinking. You guys are the park experts, so I can't be bringing up something that sounds totally new. I really don't think that I am, because I've been to many parks in many different cities and areas, and this is something that they pride themselves in, is the ability to service as many kids as possible, say in a low-cost baseball, not uber competitive, type of thing, that they have the infrastructure to do it. They put all their gameplay, together. It may not be in one spot, but they've got it covered. In other words, we have a lot of parks sitting there not being fully utilized, as you brought up to in the plan, but we're not talking about bringing those parks up to usage with this kind of overarching goal in mind.
Commissioner Wentworth, so we have had discussions. After the last meeting, we talked specifically about that recommendation. And the challenge that we're having with it is the goal of the plan has been equity, to spread the amenities throughout the city. And when we consolidate those amenities into a few facilities, then we lose that equity, because we have that level of service of, so many amenities per resident. And the goal is, when we reach that, we put those spread out within the quadrants. So to have the goal, an additional goal or priority to be able to provide those at a consolidated format or at a consolidated location does kind of go against the goal of equity. So we need to
I'm not
find
sure
a good
that I'm
balance.
looking at, okay, so maybe consolidation isn't the right word, because I'm not talking about making new facilities or new infrastructure. I'm more talking about looking at how do you utilize what you currently have, too.
Coordinating.
Yeah, it's a more coordinating type of thing. So the limitations that are on the north side of the city, like with Promenade Park, as far as infrastructure, it's like, how do you look at Cresta Verde and the, what's the other park over there? The other one that has a lot of field space. There's 2 other parks over there that are underutilized. This is what I'm talking about. Those 2 other parks could be used for flag football in conjunction with what's going on the south side. I'm talking about, I'm not talking about making it an equity. I'm talking about looking at the whole system and saying, okay, we can have more programming that does equalize it. As we talked about, in here, it does call for improvements to parks in that area, but it doesn't call for, in, let's say, the north side, how to string together. We've got 3 basketball courts over there. If you added an additional, not just improve the basketball court at Fairview, but there's room to put 2 or 3 more. You see what I'm saying? And there's a backstop and there's a field. And so the higher level thinking to me is to say, you can have more programming on the south side easily by making those enhancements and thinking about how this is going to be used.
And I think those are two different parts of the discussion. How we program and where we put the league play is something we can definitely have more conversations about, and flexibility to be able to move where we program those at which parks. But where we put those new facilities at, if, for example, you mentioned the basketball courts, if we were to build another basketball court where we already have 2 or 3 basketball courts, as opposed to put that basketball court at a location that doesn't have a court, then that's when we have that equity imbalance. Because the master plan has guided us to be able to recommend that those amenities go in places that don't have them already, as opposed to concentrating them in clusters.
I guess, how about, so El Cerrito Sports Park has like 2 or 3 basketball courts at it. Fairview just has 1. So I guess the concept I'm getting at is that you have teams over there. You can't have teams at Fairview. It's kind of that recognizing, I don't know, I might be completely off base here, but it's kind of, I'm asking to recognize that part of the inequity and the placement of these new infrastructure items that we might be considering also take into consideration the inequity in programming.
And I think one of the ways I'm also trying to balance kind of these competing interests, just like we do throughout all of these. There's always competing interests throughout a plan. So thinking about these in terms of prioritization is really helpful. I think it also might be helpful to integrate this into the plan in a way that kind of elevates it from just a kind of strategy perspective is to look at these facilities that, especially the facilities that we are recommending, and we heard a lot from the community that we need more of. So like pickleball, we have kind of a target of how many we see as a tournament facility. If we have, a statement in here about what number of tennis courts would facilitate that kind of use, that could then help decision-making moving forward so that information is readily available. 6 courts at this place. If we're looking at, okay, we have our checklist of X's and we have an option to put in, a futsal court or a tennis court at a place where we said, oh, well, here we could get a tournament-style facility. Maybe that's a decision we can make through that kind of decision-making process. So if we've gotten that information in the plan, that might get to the eventual goal that you're looking for, while trying to balance this need for really programming throughout the city to provide recreational variety, within walking or driving distance of everyone.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think I have a specific thing in mind with the basketball, because I had a friend that was a substitute teacher that coached basketball for free and for junior high kids. And they had a league kind of thing going, and yet not enough place to play. And these were all lower income kids. And what I saw in our park system was, just the lack of where the courts actually are at El Cerrito. I mean, and that's not enough. They needed to be on the Auburndale side. They needed to be on that north side. And so I'm holding that specific example in my head as a form of equity in a way, because it's not in the priorities spelled out quite this way. And so that's kind of why I brought that up.
And I understand what you're getting at now. So looking at it from an equity standpoint for programming, not just the actual facility itself. So because we don't have a community center in every quadrant where we can offer these programs, let's look at what we can put into our parks to be able to bring the programs to the neighborhoods.
Exactly. We've got football on the south side. We're not offering football on the north side because we've underutilized 2 parks on the north side that have a lot of field space that could accommodate it. Same thing with the basketball. I was looking at a teacher that was dealing specifically with the kids from Auburndale Junior High and CFIS, and not being able to get them, to play together and be able to do that in our park space. And it's like on that side, on that north side where it needed to be. And so that's kind of where I was coming from. It's that kind of thing where there's a lot of opportunity to embrace the youth and the programming, where it isn't where we're leasing these fields and courts out for the pay-to-play leagues, because that's not what I'm trying to accommodate here. I'm trying to enhance the idea of programming and infrastructure in an equity and actually bringing it kind of full circle.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I understand, and I think we can revisit that and have some updated discussion on that at our next meeting in December. So thank you.
Commissioner Kinney?
I'll make it quick. I kind of feel it's a little disingenuous to talk about equity in parks and priorities when the one park that's not really being talked about much is the amount of money that's going to be spent on City Park and how that's going to impact these priorities in this plan. I know it's mentioned in here, but that's a really big amount of money that's going to be, I'm hearing people talking $100 million. I mean, I don't know if it's going to get to that, but I think that that running them in parallel rather than in sequence, to me, it just makes this, I kind of feel like, I I don't know, like, it's going to cast, I mean, it's going to impact whatever happens at City Park and what's decided is going to make an impact on this, but we don't know how it's going to impact yet. And so I kind of feel like putting this forward without having that finalized and not be, I don't know, I just think it was kind of a weird way to do it. So I don't have any suggestions. I just wanted to say that.
Can I
Vice Chair.
add that I've brought that up here as well before you were here, and I've brought that up many times before Amy was here, was this track that we're running City Park ahead of everything else, to what consequence? And then it felt disingenuous to talk about everything in City Park without evaluating the park system as a whole. And I've said it so many times, I don't say it anymore. So it's a concern. I thought that when I was reading this document, but I just kind of choose to ignore this statement. I mean, Commissioner Kenny's bringing it up, but I just wanted to get out there and say, I'll just say it again. It's, we're looking at the entire system, but City Park has taken on its own master plan with its own price tag, and it's hard to evaluate what you want to do in the entire system against that one project. It's the way these are coming out is difficult. And same with the, looking at the price tag for Skyline. It's like, I know as a commission, we don't talk about budgeting, but in common sense, it's like, why are we going to spend money on a consultant to talk about this particular thing right now, and we're spending the money right now? That, it goes right along with this, where it's like $100,000 into something else. I mean, you could just do an online survey to find out how irate everyone's going to get when you put up plans for Skyline Regional Park, because that's what's likely going to happen. That's my gut instinct there. So I just look at that and I say, okay, again, we're trying to weigh one thing against the other. So I just wanted to add to her comments that we brought that up before, so thank you.
At this moment, I believe Commissioner Kinney is needing to leave the facility, so, but Godspeed. Vice Chair?
Good night, Commissioner Kenny. Safe drive.
No problem.
It's been a long one. So I think I just want to recap what I said before. Don't really have anything new, but that is that we kind of just take a system view in general. My concern is that the rubric is for things in a vacuum. And, this kind of speaks to what Commissioner Wentworth was talking about of a coordination. If we kind of back out, zoom out a little bit and say, okay, well, I don't need to build 12 basketball courts here because I already have 4 over here, and I could do some over here and make a thing happen. And we do that today. It's not an exotic thought. AYSO, half the games are at Santana, half of them at Auburndale Intermediate, and some weekends you go here and some weekends you go there, depending on where your game is. So they don't have to all be in one spot to make league play work. I don't know that league play is my highest priority. I know it's a very important part of the community, but it's worth looking at to see if it's not a huge thing. We're not talking about building a ton of courts in one spot. It's just coordination and backing out and zooming out a little bit. Same thing with the prioritization of an individual product. We got to look around and see what's going on around that project to make it make the most sense and get the biggest bang for our buck and serve the most stakeholders, right? And it's just a little bit of extra work to kind of take that systematic view of things. And I'll reiterate my emphasis on prioritization of getting our legacy parks up to current standard. I think that would be the greatest thing we could do for existing residents today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I guess I'll close this portion of it by saying, adding 5 more things. Community input's important, even for older parks, existing parks, or new parks. We can't forget community input. Again, I said it before, but parking is going to be critical on the older parks because they were built 30, 40, 50 years ago with older criteria, older recommendations, different clientele. We've changed a lot in the last 50 years, so we need to change our thinking process for parking. Again, traffic studies is going to be really critical for parking issues. We need traffic studies. And the noise mitigation, they kind of work hand in hand. If you had 3 hands, they work hand in hand. And then again, I see it here at Border Park, they have a two-holer, men's and women's, one hole each. You might have 80 people playing pickleball, drinking lots of water on any given Saturday potentially. But then where do they go to the bathroom? It's going to be, you can't have a park that size and only have a two-holer there to relinquish yourselves to accommodate that need. So restrooms need to be thoroughly thought out, whether it be at an older park and more importantly at a new park also. So community input, parking, traffic studies, noise mitigation studies, restroom facilities, and no matter if you do A through Z on our parks that we have on the list here, they're going to all need to have that type of look-see. It's important. So that being said, can we move on to the last one here, the commission members' reports and comments, starting with Ms. Bash.
No comments.
Ms. Wentworth?
I just want to say thank you to the staff for a wonderful cleanup out on Skyline Trail. And I'm not going to say it was easy, it was hard. I picked the wrong group. I was doing cutting all the overgrown weeds that were taller than my head. But we made good progress and people did a lot of hard work and I think it made a difference. So I just want to thank you guys again for all the hard work you do for the cleanups and just the continued maintenance and paying attention to what we're saying and really striving to get it right. So I appreciate that.
Vice Chair?
Ditto on that. I enjoyed a hike at Hagedorn Canyon this weekend with my kids, and freshly, brightly painted, anatomical-free sign was welcome. It's nice out there, so thank you for putting those on and getting the community out there to help out with that. Thank you.
And lastly, for Tommy Munoz here, volunteer recognition was fantastic this week. I happened to be there with my wife and had a good time, great time. Hands five to that city program. Tomorrow there'll be a senior Thanksgiving luncheon. That'd be exciting. And then upcoming events at Border Park. I had a 2-hour course last Saturday with the fire department on AED safe stations. That was illuminating, to say the least. Upcoming holiday events, from what I heard tonight, that'd be fantastic. Looking forward to those. And then this Friday is high school football. So we'll be there. We got to vote for our Centennial to be there, so. Not vote, but high five to those coach slogan and all. So with that being said, without further ado, thank you for joining us for the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting tonight. We will adjourn this meeting at 8:25. Next meeting at the Parks and Recreation Commission is scheduled for Tuesday, November 29th, for a special commission meeting beginning at 5 p.m. in the council chambers right here. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. Take care.